Welcome to episode number 48 of Life Without Cravings. This week I have an interview with Alex. Many of you will be familiar with Alex. He has been on my channel before. I have been coaching Alex live on this channel for many months to many people's amusement, shall we say. Alex is very articulate, he's very intelligent, he has a lot of deep thoughts. Unfortunately, he's using his own brain against himself a lot. And he has had his struggles, he has had his successes, and he has finally got to a place where he has started applying it all on a more consistent basis. He has lost 20 kilos in the last 4 months, or slightly less. He's on a carnivore diet now, and he is no longer participating in any addictive behavior when it comes to eating. So I thought it was time that we get him back on the channel for a checkup, and he also has some really good insights that I think you will enjoy, and there are a lot of gold nuggets in there that I think you can take with you. So without further ado, here is my interview with Alex. Okay, so we have Alex back on the channel. He has been missing in action for a little bit, so I've been kind of poking around, been a little bit worried, and things seem to be going really well. So I thought this is probably the time when we're going to have him on. We're going to ask him some questions and see what's happening. And I have a few things that I want to kind of poke your brain about. But do you want to just kind of fill people in, people who might not be familiar with you or your channel, like what's happening? When did you start this journey? And maybe mention how much weight you have lost in that time, etc.
Sure thing. Yeah, first of all, it's wonderful to be back on your channel. Thanks for inviting me. It's good to see you, Pim.
You're welcome.
So, for those of you who don't know me, I came across the carnivore diet in 2018 because I had kidney stones, and my urologist told me they're caused by something called oxalic acid, which occurs in vegetables. So I started learning about anti-nutrient toxins in vegetables, and then by reading a lot about that, I was exposed to the community that discusses that topic the most, our carnivore community. So I began to make my way through, the sort of the popular carnivore channels back in 2018 until I eventually found Pim's channel and Bart's channel. And I spent another 4 years basically just trying to get myself in the right place mentally to have the courage and the focus to actually do it. And it took a lot of suffering and a lot of eating the wrong foods and weight gain and losing my health to finally make me desperate and to be suffering enough to actually to realize, hey, I've got a big problem. This is getting serious now, so I've got to actually commit to this diet and put both feet through the door. So February 15th this year, I started a YouTube channel called Bring Yourself to Be Yourself, and it documented the first 30 days of transitioning from a standard Western diet to a carnivore diet. And during that time, I did a carbohydrate reduction protocol, which Professor Bart Kay advised me to do, gradually reducing carbohydrates so that the gut microbiota doesn't get upset. But by mid-March, I was fully carnivore and have been since then. And I have lost a total of 46 pounds. So this morning I weighed in at 254 pounds, and I began at 300, obviously. So for Europeans, that's essentially starting at like 140 kilos and going down to 120. So I've lost 20 kilos in 4 months. And today is actually
So
4
good.
months to the date. Yeah, 120 days. Yeah. So, yeah. So yeah, that's it. My channel initially was like a verbal exposition of everything that I was thinking and feeling. But then after a certain point, um, the the people who started watching my channel were less and less known to me, and they were just random people on the internet as the channel grew. And my views basically went from like 100 to something like 2, sometimes 3,000. And all of a sudden, I was confronted with something that made me quite uncomfortable, which is that strangers would be watching some of the more private and intimate things I was saying about what it's like to be an addict. And I think initially I thought that I had enough courage um, and a thick enough skin to be exposed in such an intimate way. But the more people started watching, I began to feel quite uncomfortable. And I realized I was actually more comfortable when I had a very small number of subscribers, and all of them were in this carnivore community, because they felt more like my friends, my brothers, my sisters, and they would give me some really great advice, and they would relate to me in a very intimate way. But yeah, when more people started watching, I decided to delete all of those videos, which may or may not have been the right thing to do, but I did it. And then I started making shorts, just 60-second shorts, um, of a much more superficial and ephemeral nature. Just look, it's me. I weighed this yesterday. I weigh this today. Some clips of what I'm eating, some of the exercise I do, some of the self-improvement actions in which I engage. And I did that up until about maybe a month ago, and and then basically something happened which I hadn't anticipated. My life actually started to become full and enjoyable and fun, and all of a sudden, I didn't have the kind of space or the boredom or the vacuum anymore to prioritize making videos every day. Um, and I didn't want to record or document what I was doing. I just wanted to do it. So in the last month, I haven't really made a video because I've been working and I've been exercising, socializing, getting out there in the sun, and and living, perhaps, well, no, living definitely the fullest life which I have maybe for the last 2 decades. And my conscience has reproached me on a few occasions, and told me, you have subscribers, and I'm getting messages saying, why aren't you making videos anymore? Um, that telling me that I had a certain responsibility to them. But in the end, I just couldn't bring myself. I haven't been able to bring myself to make any videos recently, because the moment in which I think about getting my camera out to film stuff, I just don't want to. I just want to. I have wanted to just live it and just enjoy it without filming it. Um, but I think that will come back around. I'm gonna start making videos again in the next week or so. But yeah,
That's so correct.
that's kind of what.
I
Yeah.
had a goosebump moment there. I think that's so awesome, and I just want to bring like everyone back to what you were saying. Like I had this shift where I actually wanted to live it and not just film things and sort of talk about it that I'm gonna get there. All of a sudden it just poof happened and you wanted to do it. And I think that's the moment that everyone is waiting for when they're trying to quit and when they have this addiction depression, if we should call it that, that, well, there's nothing else there. And then all of a sudden it just happens. And it's just the work behind the scenes that you don't actually see until it happens. So I'm
Mm.
like, when I reached out to you, I was like, oh my God, is he all right? Has something happened? Is he, what's happening? And you're like, everything's fine. I was like, yes, yes, that's what we're looking
Yeah,
for.
I can understand that. For me, silence historically has meant that I was back in the food and the compulsive behaviors.
Yeah.
start, destroying myself. But no, not on this occasion. On this occasion, it finally means the opposite. I've been living, um, and look, that doesn't mean that it's all been sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Uh, there's definitely been, c- you know, uh, I haven't been filming, but that doesn't mean I haven't been still suffering. I've got 20 years of negative thinking and kind of limbic system overload, which is not it's not going to just disappear because I go carnivore.
Yeah.
You know that. A lot of people in this community know that. I've just been trying to observe my thoughts and my feelings more, and it's not always hard. Um, and I try to go as much as I can. I try to reach out to the people who are the most sensitive and intelligent and articulate in my friendship group, who challenge me, because uh, you know coming off of sugar and gambling, which were my two most destructive addictions, that hasn't stopped me from being an addict. It's meant that I've got control using your methods and this diet. I've got control over the two most destructive and toxic addictions. But my brain, it still found clever ways to get dopamine secretion from other things. I'm still watching pornography. I think that's perhaps the last harmful vestige that's maybe keeping my brain trapped in like a dopamine dependency cycle, and it's definitely feeding into the continued depression and anxiety. um but watching porn a couple of times a day doesn't take £5,000 out of my bank account. Watching porn twice a day doesn't it doesn't destroy my metabolic health. It's like, in the hierarchy of addictions, it's the least of the worst. And and then there are sort of more subtle addictions as well, and they're still going on, and we've talked about this in the past. I still have um, this need to like to prove myself to others, and I definitely get like a dopamine hit if I get the sense that I'm approved of by people. So there's still definitely some attention seeking and approval seeking behavior, which goes beyond the like what can be expected from an extrovert, which I am. I am an extrovert in the fundamental sense. Like, and just to be clear to your audience, by extrovert, I don't mean like I'm a necessarily a loud, preening Russell Brand character, but extroverts, um, we recharge our batteries by having social interaction. Whereas introverts find social interaction very draining, and they recharge their batteries in solitude. So, I've made myself suffer a lot over the years by because of the depression and the addiction. I've cut myself off from socializing. I've cut myself off from this like wellspring of energy that I need as an extrovert. But like, I'm trying. What I've been trying to do is find a balance between interacting and connecting, but not allowing it to get out of hand, and to attention seek too much, and to allow those insecurities to dominate my behavior. But they are there.
Yep.
So I guess the essence of what I'm trying to say is that, and again, just to make this like relevant and contextualized for your viewers, almost all of whom I know suffer similarly to me, I will say to all of you, one of the great benefits of going carnivore and dealing with the binge eating addiction, and yeah, let's just leave it at that, or dealing with like the big destructive, like catastrophic addictions, is it gives you the time and the space, and the energy to look at your own psychology, because you're not just trying to deal with you're not just trying to deal with this constant, um, sinister, alarming, destructive force. So yeah, like in the last 3 months, um, I've been able to have a look at myself in a way that wasn't possible when I was in the food, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And something that I think is really important to keep in mind is like you have been trying to do this for a period of time. You've been on it, then you've been off it, and then you've been on it and off it. And that's just part of the journey. And it's different for different people. But I mean, it took me a long time as well. And some people think that when they kind of do really well for, let's say, 4, 6 weeks, and then something happens, it's like, oh, I can never do this. But look at what's happening now. It's like you have not given up. You might have had periods where you felt like giving up, but then you always bounce back and you have somehow known that this is what I need to do and this is the way to do it. And you just keep at it and you keep refocusing and keep going. And now things seem like this sounds like it's a completely different experience to what you've had before, where you actually pass the river of piss, where you want to do things and where you can feel and kind of taste that excitement that is on the other side of the addiction.
Yeah, there's some excitement there. I think the most positive and reinforcing emotion I've been feeling is just relief. Like
Mm.
what the most satisfying feeling at the moment is when I allow myself to experience reality um, as it actually is, rather than as I am always frettingly anticipating it to be. Like I definitely suffer with like, I mean, I'm a very strange contradiction, really. I am an extrovert and I am courageous socially, but while I'm simultaneously being courageous and like making connections with people fearlessly, as my mother raised me to be, because she's the same, I'm also plagued by quite fearful, neurotic, anxious thoughts about being liked and being accepted. And when I'm not in the company of like my skate crew, like my mind is literally like this catastrophizing, self-loathing factory,
Yeah.
telling literally like I went out tonight and I had a great time with the crew, the chums, but like before I left the house, my mind was telling me, "Don't go. No one likes you. They all fucking hate you." Um, and like and you don't like them. They may be rollerbladers as well, but they're not. They're not like and just this voice just trying to create all of these divisions and just trying to pull at every single thread and pull things apart, because that is my psychology. I'm an overthinker and a critical thinker. I can see why things don't work clearly, crystal clear, but
Yeah.
I'm blind. But there's like this kind of opaque fog over my ability to see the things that, the connectors, the reasons why things do work, and the reason why experiences are worthwhile, or systems are stable. I project my instability onto the world. So I hate myself, so I assume everyone else hates me. That class textbook stuff, really, nothing special there. But it's such a relief. It was such a relief to just say, just no, just go, just fucking go out anyway, and to get there and to see everyone. And then of course it's all in my head, and in the course of like 2 or 3 hours I'm experiencing this wonderful relief, like, oh, it's okay to be me. And
Yeah.
and I don't need, none of my behavior needs to come from that place of like trying to prove something. Like, we're all equal. Everyone here gets their time to shine in the sun. Like, listen to people more. Don't dominate. Don't try to control social interactions to try and quell some of that raging insecurity. Just like observe more, breathe, and enjoy these people for who and what they are. And they're all, wonderful, unique people in their own way. So yeah, that's been that is almost certainly a benefit, a reward, and a byproduct of having done the work to overcome the eating disorder, or to, to take the first steps in overcoming it. Like, not having that glucose roller coaster, that hormonal destruction of sugar, has just given me, I suppose, more control over emotional dysregulation, the kind of dysregulation that just makes my thoughts, wildly more insecure than they have been for the last 120 days.
Yeah, that's so fucking awesome. So on that note, I'm wondering, I because if you didn't see Alex's like the long videos that he did the first 30 days, you missed out on something. Personally, I found it like obviously because I have an interest in it, but I find it very interesting to see where your thought process says we're going, what you were thinking, all of that. And some of it were, typically what you're saying, the catastrophizing super dark mind that is just like, everything is piss. And it's really interesting to see how that is changing. And I think it did change during those 30 days, but also it seemed to come and go in waves, like the depression usually does when you're trying to quit. So what I would like to know is like, after you stopped doing this, because I think for you, it probably helped you doing these videos to stick with what you were doing because it kept your focus on, like, I have to report to the camera. But how
Mm-hmm.
did you hold yourself accountable after that when no one was watching?
Well, the accountability, uh, the party, I changed the party to whom I was accountable. Initially, I I made a very wise and pragmatic decision to sort of outsource that function to the viewers, because I had nothing inside, in terms of respecting my own opinion, or respecting my own. I didn't care about what I thought about me. I leveraged my insecurity, which 99.9% of the time works against me. I found a little loophole, and I leveraged my own insecurity to do something good for myself. So I thought to myself, well, I don't give a shit about myself. I hate myself, in fact. I am my own worst enemy, but I care about what other people think. So why not use that as fuel to make some change? Um, why not uh, why not leverage a kind of an insecure fear I have of being judged, and use that to keep me steadfast, and on course. So yeah, it was a very, very powerful emotion of wanting to avoid the shame and the humiliation of failure by having to confess to the audience, I fucked up 2 weeks in. I drank 2 cans of Coca-Cola. Um, it had always been in the back of my mind that I could use that fear, that need for approval, to actually push me, because it's what a lot of people do. There are a lot of Hollywood zero to hero films that are based on exactly that.
Yep.
So it was a pragmatic decision to essentially use the audience, um, to use that kind of parasocial relationship of strangers watching me on the internet, to tap into that insecurity, and then be driven forward. And and then I guess at some point I just didn't need it, and then I became the person to whom I'm accountable rather than the audience. Um,
How did that happen?
there-
Because that's
how
something
did
that I think a lot of people, that's like the $1 million question. Like how did that shift happen?
In part, I think it happened because I decided for the first time in a long time that I actually wanted something. I wouldn't allow myself to have any vision or any desires, because I could never just see past the day and its addictive pursuits. My life was just day by day, and it was addictive pursuit. It's how can I get high today? Um, but I actually, when I started rollerblading again, at some point I told myself, I really want this. Um, and, I went down to Hailsham back, around the time of my birthday to buy those rollerblades. And you remember seeing them. And when I spent all that money on them, I just looked at them every day and I thought, I'm not going to be able to enjoy them unless I lose the weight. And then I started visualizing myself rollerblading at like an amatorial level, because I was never professional as a teenager, but I was like an amateur. Like I could do some good stuff. I guess in the talent pool, I was somewhere in the middle, But it's with aggressive inline, it's hard to be in the middle. Like, the top pros, they'll do crazy tricks like backflips down flights of stairs, and I'm not athletic enough to do that, and I'm too much of a scaredy cat to do that kind of death-defying stuff. But I'll throw myself down a big flight of steps, and do a 180 or a 360 because I have that confidence, or I had that confidence when I was a teenager that I could land it, and I had the youth and robustness to recover if I fell and was injured. And
Have you done that now?
well, it's not possible yet because I'm still about 35 kilos overweight, and it would be physically dangerous to do those tricks, because if I don't land them and I have a bad fall, it will almost certainly be like a broken bone or a fracture, which is an injury I never had when I was a teenager. The worst injuries I had were sprains and gashes, but I never broke a bone or fractured a bone, thank God. But the point is, doing the carnivore diet and observing anecdotally that by having this diet and also, well, that I've formed a holistic approach to well-being now, which is rooted in the rational and the demonstrable. It's not just a bunch of woo-woo. Like, I have the best diet in the world, thanks to you and Bart. I have the most potent stem cell nutraceutical, the Cerule pills, which I've been taking every day for 4 months, and they've definitely done something to me inside. So my stem cell count is going to be higher than most 37-year-olds. My recovery time is going to be better than most 37-year-olds. My body, even though it's old and fat, I don't have any significant injuries. So, the more I get into shape, the frame, like the bone structure and my joints and everything that's waiting for me when I'm eventually like slim and athletic again, it's in pretty good shape because I didn't use it. I have a bit of scoliosis because of like sitting down too much, but I'm seeing an osteopath and we're working through that. And I've been doing some exercises to make my back stronger and more flexible. But basically, the point is that I ended up in hell for 20 years, but and I'm sure that a lot of people in the carnivore community who came from a place of sickness and addiction will agree with me that in the end, even after all the suffering, you begin to see it as a blessing, because it does seem like you have to suffer a lot in order to get to the point where you have to do something so drastic as to eliminate all plant foods. But then the reward you get in terms of emotions and athleticism and happiness and well-being is it's incalculable. So basically, I I never really let go of rollerblading. In the 20-year hiatus, when I wasn't doing it, year after year, I would still watch skate videos. I would still fantasize about what I wanted to do. It never left me between, 17 and 37. It never left me. Um, so yeah, this diet, the Cerule pills, the electrical earth grounding, my new relationship with blue light, my relationship with sleep, doing high intensity training at the gym. I'm doing everything that you and Bart have taught me, and it's working. And I'm doing cold showers as well. I don't have warm showers anymore. All of my showers are like ice cold, and
Fuck
that
yeah.
and by doing that, my recovery is so much better. If as soon as I come in from rollerblading, if I have like a freezing cold shower, I wake up in the morning and I don't have any aches. I don't have any stiffness. It's like I've been blessed to have all of this golden, elitist, exclusive, rare information, and it's real. It's rational. It's scientific. It's demonstrable. It's not just a bunch of fucking woo woo.
Yeah.
And I basically I can see an opportunity by utilizing all of these practices, all of this information, to bring my body back to a point where maybe, I don't know, but maybe I might be able to be a better rollerblader at 37 than I was at 17. And that really excites me. And when I began to take that idea seriously a couple of months ago, I finally had something that I wanted, and I had something that I could attach to my objectives and my motivations and my intentions. So yeah, when I get the strongest thought that I've had in my mind, um, to keep me on the straight and narrow when I have been tempted to have things like ice cream, is just to say, like, no, what I want is not possible by doing that.
Yes.
So the short answer is I actually want something that's worth fighting for now.
Oh yeah. I love it. That's so good. Now, can we take one more step back? Because you
Sure.
have, like, the very first time I talked to you, you were like, yeah, this is it. I've reached the limit. I'm ready to quit. And then you failed. And then you came back. You're like, yep, now I'm ready. And we always do that to ourselves. We always say, yeah, I'm ready now. So how would you know that when you're ready? Did it feel any different this time when you started? Like, how do you know when you're ready to quit? Because a lot of the time it's kind of wish thinking, and we feel like that little insecurity inside that just tells us that I'm actually not that ready, but I'm going to say it and I'm going to try to talk myself into it. So, have you noticed any difference? Do you know for sure that you are ready? Or did you know for sure that you were ready this time before you even got to the place where you're like, yeah, I really, really want to be that good at rollerblading?
Yes, I did. I did know that I was ready on February 14th, the day before I made my first video. I absolutely knew that I was ready, and I had a voice in my head saying, very sternly, like, you will make a video tomorrow, like, no more fucking around. Like, you're gonna make the video, and once you make the video, that's it. The ball is rolling now. It's going down the hill, and you have to run after it. As for what things have to come into alignment for a man to say to himself so, in such a singular and certain way, uh, it begins. There are so many intangibles there that it's impossible to put them all together and to say, here is the formula to be ready.
Mm.
But to just leave it at that would be a cop out for your viewers and mine, because people like me are blessed with the ability to articulate, so I can try to articulate some of them, the less intangible intangibles, the ones which are more identifiable. So here are some of the things that have to come into alignment. Uh, you have to suffer, and that suffering for a lot of people has to be extreme, or it has to frighten them to an extreme degree. In February of this year, I was having symptoms which were almost certainly the precursor to a stroke. I was doing markets in February. Well, no, I was doing markets in February of the year before, and even the year before I was having these symptoms, my left arm would go numb, and the blood circulation to my brain was definitely being affected. It felt like it was being cut off and then reintroduced and cut off. my vision would sometimes almost begin to black out, but then come back. And I think, though I never got tested, I never had a calcification score, I think it's no stretch of the imagination to assume that 20 years of Coca-Cola, vegetable oils, and massive influxes of sugar and junk food and Randall cycle every single day probably was giving me heart disease. Um, Either that or my acid reflux was getting so severe that it was affecting my heart's ability to pump blood throughout my body. But either way, I could feel a visceral, threatening sense that something sinister was brewing. So um, there was a huge impetus in February to put both feet through the door and start making these changes, because I had a very real sense, which I really squared up to for the first time in 5 years, like health failure is just around the corner. Not like I could know. So what's the best way to articulate that? I could no longer entertain the delusional notion in my mind that that health failure was still far away enough to be avoided in time. Time felt like it was running out, like maybe within this year, if I was still drinking 3, 4, 5 cans of Coca-Cola a day, um, I would have a heart attack or something bad. Like my acid reflux was just a disaster. It was unbearable. Like I said, my left arm going numb, my head feeling kind of dizzy, like the blood circulation was being cut off, depression, anxiety. I looked like death. I had black rings under my eyes. I look at photos of myself 4 months ago. Uh, I looked like absolute death. You don't really begin to see yourself until you start to make changes. And then when you put a photo of yourself now when I put a photo of myself now next to 4 months ago, I looked like I was seriously ill. So I guess the first answer is suffering. Like I guess I'm not saying it should be this way, but it certainly is the case. And a lot of people know that
Yeah.
you have to suffer in life to bring forth the discomfort, the requisite discomfort that pushes you to action. And that doesn't make you a bad person or a lazy person or an unworthy person. It just makes you a human being. And you of all, Pim, with everything that you've studied on the human brain, or just the essence of humanity and the essence of like evolution, which is that we're always looking for the path of least resistance. So if we can sort of get away with being comfortable for as long as possible, we'll do so even at the expense of our health. And
Yeah.
so to I guess to finally give me a reason to walk away from comfort and to learn to be uncomfortable, to be comfortable with discomfort, I had to get very uncomfortable. And I don't blame myself for that. I blame the fact that the world is too comfortable. And I think because the world is so comfortable, there's a barrier between the individual and that harsh discomfort that they need to feel. Because the harsh stresses and discomfort of the natural world are what motivate animals to survive and to push themselves. So yeah, discomfort, like really feeling it, that suffering that makes you frightened, you I think you eventually you go through the barrier and then it hits you. And so that's one of the things that has to come into alignment. The second thing is more intellectual, but it's extremely important that people understand that you are only ready when you realize that there is no ready. It's a
Thanks for
paradox.
saying
It's a
that. Yeah.
duality. Yeah, it's a duality, right? So it's one of many dualities in life. It's like you are ready once you understand that the whole concept of being ready is illusory. It's just, it doesn't exist. There is no ready. And then when you let go of that, you let go of the need for these thought processes and mechanisms which you assume naively are serving you. You assume that they're actually constructing a safe and reliable plan for change. And once the plan is complete, then you'll be ready. But that's not what they're doing. That's how they present it to you. It's a deception. What they're really doing is you're just constructing a wall until eventually you look at that wall, and the wall is constructed with expectations for certain circumstances and conditions to be required or satisfied. And then you realize, holy shit, I have to have all of these conditions satisfied before I make the change. Well, I'm not ready because I can't see them, I can't observe them. So the mechanisms that we use to conceptualize being ready are actually what we're actually using them to just create an insurmountable pile of conditions that actually don't need to be satisfied. They don't need to be they don't need to be satisfied in order to take the first step. They just don't.
That's so fucking good. If I can just cut in, I always say it, but everyone is still waiting for this moment when they're going to be ready. So that's why I wanted to ask you, and then you just come up with that. And we haven't pre-planned this, by the way. It was actually yours.
It's always just mine, isn't it?
Of
When
course.
have we ever pre-planned anything?
Never. But people don't know when it's, podcasts, etc. I mean, yes, we did speak before the interview for 10 minutes, but not about that. So that's awesome. About one thing that I'm going to bring up before we finish. But was there anything else, or shall we leave it at those two?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I think I owe it to your audience just to try and include as much as I can.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, this one's obvious, so there's no need exploring it too deeply. It's pretty obvious. Resources. I saved up some money last year, and if I hadn't had that money, then I would have had to work. And I don't think that I would have been able to do the first 2 months if I had to be working like 30, 40 hours a week, especially in my job. So this is of course, that which I'm describing is a privilege that only a certain percentage of people can afford. But I guess all I can say is if you do have the financial resources to take a couple of months off work, then do. That's just my subjective opinion based on my experience. I was exhausted. I was suffering. I was miserable and anxious, and I would not have been able to perform at my job. And the project, even though looking back now, it seems so sort of myopic and singular. All I had to do was just eat some meat and cook some pasta and make a video. Because of the stress of having that crutch of sugar and compulsive binging just torn away, everything, every exertion, every thought, all of your efforts become incredibly leaden and heavy. Like you are taking steps under the ocean wearing like the iron suit. And you like, I remember like at the end of each day, like getting to the end of the day, it felt like a titanic exertion. Like it took every ounce of focus and belief to make my entire day, every day for 30 days, about eating meat, eating pasta, filming myself doing it, editing the videos, uploading the videos. That was all I could do. I could not have done more than that. So if I had to work 40 hours a week during that, I'm not sure if I could have done it. But but then again, I am soft, and or I still am, but I'm a lot less soft, undisciplined, spoilt, um, and um, and lazy. Um, so I guess if you're like me and you're really frightened, as I was, that you wouldn't be able to go through the stress of how would you describe it? You know, like cold turkey, like that. The transition from eating addictively to eating in an extremely healthy way, like going from one extreme end of the spectrum to the other. If you're frightened that you couldn't do that while holding down a full-time job, that then you should listen to that fear and try to do something about it. Try to see if possible, if you can create the circumstances where you can just give yourself a month or two to really just focus on it, because um, it's it 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 hits your body, your mind, and your emotions and your soul like a train. Like it's a huge undergoing. It really is. I'm not saying that to try and self-aggrandize and exaggerate the degree of the achievement, but I've done this. I did this 4 months ago, and I can tell you, um, it will be a lot easier to be a success if you can just take a couple of months off work and really dedicate yourself to it. And look, think of it like this: if you're resistant to the idea, if you were as steeped in alcohol addiction as I was steeped in sugar addiction 4 months ago, your employer and your family would send you to rehab. And while you were in rehab, you wouldn't be working. Every moment of every day would be about getting past the eating, the alcoholism. We downplay and diminutize the significance of being completely controlled by a sugar addiction, and it's the addiction which is taken the least seriously. But
Yeah.
believe me, like getting off of sugar, um, it's pretty fucking heavy on the body, and it deserves as much gravitas and significance to come off of it. So try to analogize it as being an alcoholic needing to take a couple of months off of work to dry out. Like you are drying out, but it's not vodka, it's Coca-Cola. So if you can, then do. So that was definitely like something that really helped. Like having the money I saved up so I wouldn't have to work.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the last thing I should mention is community. Um, every day while I was making the channel, I was privileged because, of course, Pim and I are not advocating that you make a channel and do this. Like most of you will just do it. You won't make a channel.
Yeah.
I needed the channel because of my aforementioned motivations. Like I don't think I couldn't have done it without the channel. But hopefully, you don't have my pathologies. You don't have my addictive need for approval. Um, and you can just do it for you. But I couldn't do it for me. I needed people to watch me do it. For better or worse, that was how it was for me. But I imagine most of you watching don't need other people's approval to be that impetus. But you will need someone to talk to. And the more honest you are, the more you just bear all of your uglinesses. Because if you are an addict watching this, I know you. I fucking know addicts. and I know what happens to us addicts. I know what happens inside our sickly, insecure, pathological little minds, and all the dirty secrets that we hide from others and from ourselves. I bore a lot of ugliness to the world in my first 30 or 40 videos. I talked about things I hadn't even talked about with therapists, like quite dark stuff, quite painful stuff. I wasn't doing it on the phone with one person. I wasn't calling Pim to tell Pim about, my dad and his alcoholism and threatening to kill us all at the dinner table on Christmas Day once. Like I told the audience that, and it really helped. And it really helped to read all of the lovely, compassionate, sensitive, and insightful comments underneath the video. And some people actually reached out, and I had the opportunity to have a call with like 3 or 4 of my audience and just get to know them and talk to them. I did like 2 or 3 interviews with Bart, had a number of conversations with Pim. And what that all amounts to is I had a resource, which again, much like the money, I suppose it should be categorized as a privilege. And I know that it can be a privilege to have lots of people at one's disposal like that. But it is what it is. I did have that. I know that you may not be as fortunate, but I still, it's incumbent upon me to talk about the reality of that, and that it does bring tremendous value and reinforcement to the process. I had people on a regular basis with whom I could talk about everything, all of the stuff that was coming up for me, both mentally and physically. Just talking about my motivations to do it and to remain on point. I had my mother, I had my friends, I had you, I had Bart, I had the audience. I was very, very lucky. So you, or one of Pim's audience members, if you are kind of on the cusp of walking the same path that I have, that Pim has, that Bart has, and dealing with your addictions and doing this diet, factor that in. Like try to strategize. Like think about every emotional and social resource that you have at your disposal, and reach out to people. And there's only one way to reach out to people if your expectation is that they are to give you and sacrifice their time to listen to you and your shit. And it's the only way. It's the universal, ubiquitous way, and that is you have to be completely vulnerable and completely honest. You have to tell people, I am scared. Tell people I am alone. Tell people I am lonely. Tell people I need you, and state it categorically. Don't just send people text messages saying, oh, do you have 20 minutes to talk? Like be upfront and tell people what you're going through, because otherwise they won't know. They won't rise to the challenge. They won't make that sacrifice for you because they just simply don't understand the scale of the degree to which you need them, and you'll resent them, and you'll project onto them that they should know what I'm going through and they're not helping. There's only one way to make other people know what you're going through. You have to maximize honesty, maximize vulnerability. You have to turn the volume of what you say and how you say it up to 10. Like, because you are desperate. You are pathetic in the traditional romantic sense. Like you are weak. You are a child reaching out to yourself, to knowledge, to wisdom, to strategy, to the process involved, and to these support works. You are like a weak, pathetic, desperate child, and you have to accept that as an addict if you want to take real steps towards becoming strong and to become an adult finally, because addicts are children, and addicts are like children who just can't stand to be with themselves, and they can't stand in the center of themselves. And it takes a lot of courage to tell people that, to say, I need your help. I'm really fucked up, but I'm going to do something about it. And I'll tell you this: the more the people to whom you reach out see you succeed and see you working on your own behalf to get well, the more time and the more energy and the more attention they give you. It's one of the unfortunate realities of the universe is I think the most unjust thing about life, but there's nothing you can do about it, is, I call it the gravity principle. So like, if you are a small mass, you have a small amount of gravity as a force. So you can only pull small amounts of mass towards you. But the more mass you have, the more gravitational force you have. So the more you can pull towards you. So a perfect example of this is like the people who need financial investment the most to start up their business and live their dreams. Banks are not interested in them because they have no capital, they have no property, they have no business, they have no reputational standing. Meanwhile, a big wealthy company that already has billions in assets and liquidity can get any loan they want from the bank whenever they want. So the people in the world who don't need resources, either real or emotional, are surrounded with attention. They get all the attention they need because people love to give their energy and their time to entities that are already successful, and that will bring up tremendous resentment in you, as it did for me. But you just have to deal with it. You just have to accept that even though you need people the most, when you are being pathetic and you are self-destroying and you're not taking care of yourself, the human instinct to, like rats deserting a sinking ship, to just abandon you because you're not doing anything to help yourself, it's real, and in most cases it's unavoidable. Only the remarkable, exceptional saints of the world will stay on a sinking ship to help you. So you definitely need to help yourself, and the first way in which you do that is by being completely upfront and vulnerable and honest to all of the people closest around you, to just how low and just how wretched and just how powerless and just how weak you've allowed yourself to become.
I have a
Don't be
question.
pride. Don't be pride. Sorry, don't be prideful. Like I told everyone, including my audience, that exactly what I was, because instinctively I knew that I couldn't lie. Then if I lied, that those lies somehow down the road would turn into a reason to abandon the whole thing. So you have to be honest. Yeah, be honest and reach out and be vulnerable. If you're an addict, you almost certainly are the things I just said that you are. You are. You are so small, and so am I. And
You're
if
growing.
you want to, yeah, if you want to grow, you have to put your hubris and your ego to one side and just look at yourself in the mirror and just say, yeah, I am a wretched little worm. I am a pestilent little urchin. I'm a sickly little goblin, and I'm just and
A
my
sickly
life
little
my
goblin.
yeah and my life, yeah, and it's true, and my life has been reduced to this sickly, ugly, pathetic daily search for one thing to get high, so that my dopamine reward system lights up. And don't forget what it does, addicts listening. when that dopamine reward system lights up like a Christmas tree, that is a replacement for life. Because life and everything in life with which we engage, once you are no longer an addict, once you remove addiction from the picture, your dopamine reward system can finally do what it was designed to do, which is to create hundreds and hundreds of connections with individual phenomena and actions which are there to reinforce thriving, surviving, wellness, meaning, and worth and satisfaction. So, obviously you have to have the right ideas philosophically in your mind, but you can have all the ideas in the world in your mind on how to direct yourself well existentially, but all of those are undone if your dopamine is fucked. Like, everything is underpinned by hormones. You are doing something that essentially is siphoning, it's redirecting the primary function of your hormonal system to serve and be subsumed into this one single tiny pathetic little ritual that you've developed every single day. And you are stealing away your meaning, you're stealing away your happiness, you're stealing away your satisfaction, you're stealing experience and opportunity away. Like, all of the strings and connectors between you and your life, they cannot exist if you worship at this wretched temple. Like, make no mistake about it, you are unhappy because you're an addict, and you're also an addict because you're unhappy. So you have, and this is the final thing I'll say, and this was a really big realization for me, and I really appreciate you indulging me so much, as you always do. But
Well,
this
I
is
still have a question,
absolutely,
but finish that,
yeah.
and then
Well,
I'm gonna put you
yeah.
under pressure.
Well, this is absolutely essential, and this brings me to like the final philosophical realization I had. You will not recover from addiction, and I'm not saying that I have. I don't mean to speak like this is past tense. I'm only 4 months in, but I have a clear understanding now of what I need to do. I made a video on this, but it's deleted now, so I'll paraphrase what I said in the video. The fact that you are an addict because you are unhappy, and you are unhappy because you are an addict, those are not necessarily circular. It's best to look at them as sort of two separate concepts on two different parallel lines. You are unhappy because you're an addict, because, as I said, your dopamine reward system has been hijacked by an addiction. So at the hormonal level, at the neurological level, you are disconnected from good feelings, the sorts of good daily feelings in the quotidian that give you over time consistently a broad sense of, I enjoy my life. Life is meaningful. Life is satisfying in a very real scientific way that has been hijacked by your addiction. That is the essence of what I say when I say you are unhappy because you are an addict. But there's a different essence to the other statement. You are an addict because you are unhappy. And that is because typically, on the literature is pretty clear on this. Unhappy childhoods, trauma, abandonment trauma, childhood PTSD, basically will create a pathology within you, a sickness and disorder of the mind and the way that you deal with your emotions and feeling your emotions. And it will create behaviors within you, which over time, after thousands of repeated actions, they become you, or your temporary conception of who you are. That is a fundamental form of unhappiness being synonymous with illness, with being unwell. You are unwell. You have an unwell relationship with your feelings, and 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 so do I. And it becomes extremely convenient in 2023, or in, like, the 1990s when this began for me, to gravitate towards substances which can substitute all of the dopamine which I'm not feeling, because all of the, just a feeling of being comfortable and safe and content, which I'm not feeling because I'm having a really unhappy time as a child because of circumstances. So the two, they are separate phenomena, but they feed into one another. So why am I saying this? Don't make the mistake of thinking that once you deal with the addiction, that all of the reasons for why you run away from your feelings will just magically resolve themselves. Dealing with addiction is a two-pronged process. You have to deal with your relationship with your habits in terms of neural pathway stuff, like the stuff that Pim deals with predominantly, but all the stuff that Pim does not deal with, the therapeutic aspect, the clinical psychological aspect, the talking to people about trauma, how to confront trauma and process it, that requires therapy. And but it also, therapy can be expensive, but there's a lot to be gained and benefited therapeutically by having upfront conversations about your trauma, about your unhealthy relationship with yourself and your feelings in a multitude of contexts. I go to 12-step meetings, and I get tremendous benefit talking about that aspect of myself and listening to other people talking about that. I have friends who are addicts. I have a friend who's had problems with alcohol and weed, and we talk about this stuff on a weekly basis. Every conversation is a revelation of sorts, bringing me closer and closer and closer to the fundamental truths, which I have run away from for the last 20 years. That is therapy, as well as sitting in front of a professional who will indeed charge you an arm and a leg. So, yeah, you unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of more bad news, but there's no other way of presenting it. If you want to recover from addiction, you have to look at it as two paths that you're walking, one foot on each, and the left foot is Pim Jansson, neural pathways, habits, training the brain to be in control, teaching the brain that it can actually plan, that it can eat within a plan, and understanding the neurological aspect of behavior, and but then the other path, it is a more painful and ambiguous path, but you have to walk it, because if you don't walk both paths, weakness in one, it's like a leg that gets weak underneath a structure, and it will undo the other. So if you neglect one, you will undo the other. You will compromise the other. That's the last thing I wanted to say. It's fundamental.
Right. So my question to you, because you were mentioning that when people don't get back to you, you will get resentful. How many times have you felt resentment towards me because I've been like, nope, I'm too busy, I can't talk to you right now, when you've been reaching out?
I would say about once a month for the last 4 months.
Just once a month?
Yeah, because it was typically once a month when I reached out to you.
Okay.
But like, if this isn't a masochistic invitation for me to lay into you and your character, then I would love to in front of your audience. I would love to say what a horrible person. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was a great learning experience for me, because I almost certainly reached out to you and asked you for your time just during unfortunate moments during which you were busy, and because you and Bart have increased your workload tremendously in the last couple of years. So it was a good exercise for me to confront my resentment and to counter the resentment with thoughts, uh, which and by thinking those thoughts, it gave me the opportunity to basically train myself to be less selfish and less narcissistic, because the world does not revolve around me. And although sometimes you can be an asshole,
Oh yeah.
um, like I was driving down to my mum's, and I was like scrolling on Messenger looking for the Zoom meeting details, but I couldn't find it. So I just was like, I can't keep looking down at my phone. I'm going to crash the car. But I want to join Pim's meeting. So I'll just ask her, can you just quickly send me the link? And you're like, no, you already have the link. Find it yourself. And then, of course, I didn't want to spend more time writing, but I can't because I'm on the motorway, because that defeats the point of not looking at the motorway while driving at 80 miles an hour. So I just went, thanks, Pim, which is my way of saying you're an asshole.
I figured that.
Yeah, but like, you know,
You know what?
it's
It was literally 2 messages before the one that you sent me. There was the Zoom link, and I was like, "Really? Are you kidding me? I don't have time to send a Zoom link to everyone who wants to join. You can fucking scroll."
I know, but it was one of those things. It was like when you've got a hand on the wheel and
Yeah,
your phone in your left hand, which is highly illegal.
I get it.
Like I only permit myself to sort of to look at the screen for like a second before looking back at the road, because it's like my worst nightmare, crashing my car at that speed. So
Mm-mm.
um but yeah, but the point is, like, um I have plenty of people with whom I can speak, but when I feel compelled to speak to you, it's because I have some specialized questions that only you really are qualified to answer. I guess I'm looking for a quality of counsel that only you, with your expertise, can provide. Um, so when you just summarily say, no, I'm busy, yeah, it brings up, it brings up, because you're not ceremonious at all. Like, you are maybe the least ceremonious person I know. Like, you
I'm
don't
Swedish.
sugarcoat anything. There's no sugarcoating in you. And then with my ego and my insecurity and my like expectation when I'm at my worst that people should orient their priorities around me, it's like the unstoppable force and the immovable object. Like my uh inexhaustible need for your attention and special treatment, and your complete, like, I don't give a fuck, just total intolerance to that kind of like narcissistic weakness, right? So it's been good for me. It's good for me to not get what I want. Um
And I
and
still love you.
and I love you too. And I couldn't have done this without you.
Oh,
And though I haven't like been on YouTube making videos, you and Bart are always in my consciousness, and like, you've become permanently a huge part of who I am and what I do now. Like every aspect, every successful venture of my life from now until my demise will be connected to both of you from now on, in this community.
that's so awesome. And on that note, I think it's time that we finish this interview. I had a few more things, but we are running out of time, so we'll maybe have to do a part two at some point.
Part de deux.
Part two, yes, if we're still friends by then. So I hope that you guys have found this really helpful. I always find it very interesting to talk to Alex because he's very good at expressing what's in his head. Not everyone is, and he's very good at articulating it. So he can. A lot of the things that you said today are things that I'm saying all the time, but they just it sounds much better when you say it. I might have to hire you as my assistant to just convey my messages so that we get more perspectives, and different people hear the same thing in different ways. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing that. And I think a lot of people that have seen you in the past and seen your struggles and what's been going on would probably be very relieved to hear what's happening and to see that you have progressed as much as you have. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks to you, Pim.
Thanks.